Hello. So I just forgot that I said I would vlog myself reading my year of rest and relaxation. So I just recently finished The Roughest Draft by Emily Wibberley and Austin Sippenbroka, and I was like, wait a second. I said that I was going to read my year of rest and relaxation after I finished The Roughest Draft, so we gotta start this book. I'm really excited, and I'm gonna take you along with me. I will tell you guys all about my thoughts and feelings. I'm also currently reading Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert because I need some of that like encouragement to be like creative. So that's what we're doing. I'm trying to see if there's something in my hair. It feels like there is, but I can't tell. Anyway, yeah, so we are going to start this book. I am really excited to start it. I don't know how I'm going to feel about it. I don't even know what to expect, and I'm pumped. I'm ready. So yeah, cross your fingers that I will end up liking this book because my hopes are not super high at the moment. I'm sorry, I'm having the worst, not only just day ever, but I'm also having the worst like hair day ever. My hair looks so disgusting and gross. I literally just blow dried it yesterday. I don't know what's going on with my hair at the moment. It's just so disgusting and gross and I hate it. Like, I literally hate my hair at the moment. So yeah, I also think I just look ugly today. Anyway, today is a horrible, awful day. Sorry if my fan is really loud. It's just so hot. It's actually not hot outside, but our house doesn't have air conditioning, so it literally, and there's like no breeze outside, like zero. It's weird. It's a really, really weird day. But yeah, we have no air conditioning in our house. Like, I've actually never lived in a house with air conditioning, at least not in the past like 15 years. That's just like where we're at the moment. I am currently eating Starbucks popcorn that my mom brought me yesterday, and I am currently 58 pages into my year of rest and relaxation, and I'm absolutely loving this book so much. Way more than I could have ever expected to like it. Like, I genuinely was going into this book being like, I thought I was gonna like it, but I probably won't like it. You know, as I bought this book because I thought like, okay, a lot of people love this book, a lot of people recommend it, I might love it too. But then recently I've been kind of feeling a little bit lukewarm about the book and being like, I don't know if I really want to read it, I don't know if I'm gonna like it. But no, I absolutely love this book so far. It like is so much fun to read. It's so compulsively readable, and the main character is kind of awful, but I also love her, and I see a lot of myself in this book, which is scary. But yeah, so I'm loving this book so much so far. I'm having a really, really fun time reading it, and we're gonna read more of it. Also, I found a soundtrack. I found a playlist on Spotify, if I can find it. I'll link it down below. I didn't make it. But it's literally just called My Year of Rest and Relaxation. I literally just searched that on Spotify and this one came up, and it's so good. It's truly the most perfect playlist for this book. I keep wanting to say soundtrack. I don't know what's going on. But yeah, so we're having a really rough day. It's just not good. It could have been a great day, but it's not. So yeah, that's where we're at, and I will update you guys later or soon, maybe today, maybe tomorrow, we'll see. So I have hit the 100-page mark in this book. I am loving it so much. I cannot stop reading it. It's so good. I don't even know like what to say about this book, honestly, because it almost feels like I haven't read a lot of this book. Even though I've read 100 pages, it feels like I've read like 20 pages. I think it's just because like so much of it is very repetitive. It's very much like the same day over and over and over again almost. Like she has like a really clear routine. I think there are some like interesting parts, but like I almost don't feel like I'll have a complete thought about this book until the very end when I see like how it all comes together, because so far it's really just her sleeping a lot. Her friend comes over every once in a while and bugs her, and then sometimes there's like these flashbacks to this guy that she was dating, and her going to see her therapist, quote-unquote therapist, who's like giving her a bunch of pills to make her sleep, and she's like lying about her having insomnia and whatever. She just really wants to sleep for a long time, and like her parents are dead, all this kind of stuff, but it's really just the same thing every day. But for some reason it's not boring. Like you would think that it'd be boring, but it's actually really interesting to read, and I'm really enjoying it. I will say the rumors are true. There is quite a bit of fat phobia in this book, but I almost feel like the way it's written, it's kind of like obvious that it's not supposed to be taken seriously. So I guess I can kind of see where the critiques are coming from, but also I don't, because it doesn't seem like it's meant to be taken seriously. Do I love when like bigotry in general is used to show how shitty a character is? No. Do I understand like why it's being used in this book, especially since it's set during like the early 2000s? Yes, because literally everybody, regardless of whether they were a good or bad person, was like so fat phobic back then. I mean, they still are now, but like it was even more so, especially like in 2000. So I kind of get it. It's very much of the time, so it doesn't really bother me all that much, and I'm really glad that I knew it was in this book before I decided to pick it up, because I feel like if I had gone into this book not knowing that, it kind of would have hit different, and not in like a good way. But I think that because I already knew like, okay, I'm gonna go into this and there's gonna be fat phobia in this book, I was like prepared, which I think is like the most important thing, is for me to be prepared for it. When I'm not prepared, it goes badly. But yeah, I am actually really enjoying this book. I am having a really great time reading it, and I can't believe I'm already past the 100-page mark in this book. Like, it's going by so fast. I've only been reading it for 2 days, and I thought that I was totally in a reading slump or whatever, especially since it took me so long to read The Roughest Draft. Like, I love that book. I gave it 5 stars, but it took me forever to read it. Like, it took me forever to get to 100 pages. So the fact that I'm already 100 pages in and it's only been 2 days and I'm not even done reading it for today, so weird. So weird to me, but I'm loving this book, and I can't wait to see where it takes me, because it's really good. Also, while I'm reading the book, I have been drinking this raspberry White Claw, which I don't like the raspberry flavor all that much. My favorite flavor is actually grapefruit. I just don't have any grapefruit White Claws, I don't think, in this household, so my only option was raspberry. I have to go fold the rest of my laundry, put stuff away, and then I will hopefully come back to this unless I'm too tired, and then we'll just pick it up tomorrow. finished My Year of Rest and Relaxation yesterday, and I am just so shocked by all of my feelings about this book. So I feel like I've done a few updates. I don't feel like I've done enough updates, so I kind of have a lot of things to talk about with this book. And I think firstly I kind of want to start off with some of the critiques of this book. One of the main ones that has shown up, especially on TikTok in the past few months, has been, I believe it came from an article or a review or something like that, and I will try to link it down below if I can find it. But basically it was talking about the pervasiveness of fat phobia within Ottessa Moshfegh's books, like across the board, and like not just her books, but like her short stories, her other things that she's written. And so that kind of made me a little hesitant to pick up this book, and I think it also did me kind of a favor in recalibrating my expectations when going into this book. And that's mostly why I'm grateful for all of this like critique of Ottessa Moshfegh's writing, because I think it's really important to have that knowledge going into this book that like, hey, there might be some problematic things. This is specifically what is problematic about it, because before this I had definitely heard that there was like some morally gray problematic topics within this book, and I could understand that, as I believe that this is kind of, I guess, a satire in a way. But I didn't really know the specifics, and I like to go in knowing the specifics of what the problematic issues are. So I was really glad to know that like it's fat phobia. I think there is a little bit of racism in here as well. And for me, I definitely want to know that before I go into a book, so I can kind of reevaluate what like my biases are going into a book, and you know, figure out what my expectations should be. And so I went into this book knowing, okay, there's going to be fat phobia in this book. Prepare for it. That's great, because I hate to be taken off guard by fat phobia. Like I hate it, or like racism or homophobia or whatever. Like I hate to be just like reading a book and then surprise, surprise, there's racism or fat phobia or whatever. So I was really glad to know that going in, like, okay, I know what I'm getting myself into. I know what we should expect. Let's go into this book. And beforehand, I was really, really excited to read this. I was like, I immediately purchased it when I like had a couple of people recommend it, and I was like, okay, I need to read this book. It's like a cool girl book. It's, you know, very popular. So I think if I hadn't have seen the critique, I would have gone in with really high expectations, and I might not have liked it nearly as much as I did, especially since like going into it with that high expectation and then getting met with, you know, some like slices of bigotry, that would have definitely put this on like the lower end of the spectrum for me. However, since I was able to prepare myself, I went in with a really fresh perspective, and I ended up absolutely loving this book so much. This is like my new child. I love this book. I want to read it like a billion times. I was shocked. Like I truly did not think like, oh, this might be like a 3 or 4 star book. You know, it might not be that big of a deal. I might not love it that much, and that's okay. But I ended up absolutely loving it, and I understand where the hype is coming from. Because this main character is like the definition of unlikable female protagonist. She truly is like one of the most unlikable female protagonists I've ever read. I've read a few others that I think are a bit worse than her, but overall, like, she really is a definition. Basically, after her parents have both passed away, and she has a very complicated relationship with her parents, she is left to their house, and I think all the savings that they had, like all of their wealth, and she's also on unemployment because she just recently quit her job at a local New York gallery. And basically she's just living off of all of that money. She has, I think, a tenant in her parents' house renting from her, so she has like income coming in from all different places, but she really just wants to take a year off and sleep the entire year. And like, knowing that as the premise, you would think that this would be a super boring book. Like, who wants to read about somebody sleeping for an entire year? But it was actually so interesting, and I really accredit it to the friend that continually pops up into her life, and also the therapist that pops up because she needs to get the drugs from somewhere. So she has a quote-unquote friend from college, I believe, and her name is Riva, and she and her have this very complicated relationship, and like, the main character is very apathetic towards Riva. She doesn't really even like her all that much. She really just uses her because, you know, Riva inserts herself into her life. And so whenever she comes around, she has some sort of like person to project all of her issues, insecurities, you know, apathy onto. And the main character really comes off as that type of person who just needs something to dislike, needs something to complain about. And so Riva is that person for her. That's her kind of role in her life. I do feel bad for Riva a lot of the time because she deserves a really good friend, and the main character is not a good friend at all. But Riva is like just this annoying presence in her life, but she's so interesting. And a lot of, especially the middle of the story, revolves around her, and even the ending kind of revolves around her as well. But Riva has her own issues. She struggles with an eating disorder, with bulimia, and her mom also dies within this book. So I think there are definite parallels between these two characters. They kind of almost act as foils for each other, which I find really interesting. Also, this book is obviously set in New York, and it's set around like 2000, 2001 era. And I think you can kind of figure out where that's going. I have read a couple of books like this now where it's set in New York in like 2000 and 2001, and it heavily deals a lot with 9/11. This one not as much as the other books that I've read, but definitely towards the end there is some like 9/11 stuff. So if that's a sensitive issue for you, might want to know that going into this book, so just beware. That's another thing that I was really glad that I knew before getting into this book, is that it was going to deal with 9/11. And of course, I think for everybody that's a very sensitive topic, so definite, you know, warning for that towards the end. I don't think that that's necessarily a spoiler because it is set in reality, and it makes it very clear from the beginning that it's set in like 2000. I think another thing that I really loved about this book is the writing style. It was written so beautifully, and it was just like every time I was reading this, I just kept thinking to myself, I'm like, this is truly so compulsively readable. I did not want to put this down. It just flew by so fast. And I felt like I was reading it really fast too. Like I was absorbing everything. I was reading every single word, but it felt like I was getting from the top of the page to the bottom of the page so quickly. It was so weird because for a while I'd been feeling like, oh, I'm kind of in a reading slump when it comes to physical books. Like I'm really struggling reading physical books at the moment. But this one was so easy to read, and not in a way that like, oh, the words were simple or the prose was simple. It was just so addictive in a way. Ottessa Moshfegh just really has an interesting way with words. And, you know, a lot of this is inside of the character's head, which you would think, oh, that would slow the pace down a lot because there's not a lot of dialogue. But no, like being inside of this main character's head is just so interesting. She has so many weird opinions, so many weird biases. And I mean, like this also, like, you know, talking about the first part of this clip, where I talked about some of the fat phobia that's in this book, she's definitely fat phobic. It actually wasn't nearly as much as I expected it to be. Like going into it, I thought like, oh, this is gonna be like in every other page, but it wasn't. It was like pretty minimal, but there is definitely some like very strict fat phobia, like early 2000s strict, where like if you were not a size 0 or a size 2, you were like fat basically. So it's very much in that like heroin chic era, or like kind of I don't know if it's a tail end really, because I feel like it went on for quite a while, but it's definitely like smack dab in that heroin chic era. So her friend Riva, as I said, struggles with bulimia, but she's not nearly as thin as the main character. Like the main character is described as being thin and effortlessly beautiful. Like she can like not take a shower for a week and she's still drop dead gorgeous. She's blonde, she's tall, she's thin, and that really is amplified within the narrative. Like it is made very well known. Whereas Riva is a bit shorter, she's not necessarily as pretty as the main character. She's a little bit bigger, not by much. I think they're probably like a couple of sizes apart, but there is definitely that juxtaposition between the main character, who is like perfect in every way, and then her best friend from college being the one who is just slightly imperfect in every way. I also really enjoyed the therapist character. She was so kooky and weird and like just completely out there, and really carried some of those chapters, or like some of those sections of the book that she was in, and I found her so flippin' hilarious. Like, she was just so funny, so weird. I don't even know how to explain this kind of character. It kind of reminds me of some of like the woo-woo type of people that live specifically like here in California. It's very like California woo-woo, which is weird to be set in like New York, because I don't necessarily think of New York as that crazy in that sort of way. She's very like hippie. But no, she was super funny, and I really liked that we got to see her quite a few times throughout the book. And this therapist is just like constantly giving her more drugs. I'm like, how is she getting all of these drugs from this therapist? Like, what is going on? I could not wrap my mind around that. That was just so crazy to me. I mean, it was fun getting to read this now that I've been to New York, and I can kind of be like, hey, I've been there. And like, some of this book is also set on Long Island, and I spent most of my time in New York on Long Island. So I was like, I know what Farmingdale is. I know what Massapequa is. I've been there. I like stayed there in a hotel. So yeah, like that was really interesting, and I'm glad that I've been to New York now, so I can kind of like know the vibe and know what's going on. I don't feel so out of the loop now when I read books that are set in New York. I'm like, okay, I know what it's all about. I really liked I feel like, you know, with these last couple of books that I've read, I also read In My Dreams I Hold a Knife, and both of these books have very similar parent characters. Like, very similar in the ways of they are apathetic, they have their own major issues, they don't really like their children all that much, and I feel like that's a very like boomer parent mentality. Like, both of these characters definitely had boomer parents, which I mean, I think is an issue across all parental generations. I would say it's not necessarily just boomers, but I feel like it's very uniquely, like, specifically boomer, especially that like boomer Gen X millennial relationship between parents and children, which I think is definitely what this book and In My Dreams I Hold a Knife kind of talk about. But yeah, her parents weren't like really in this book a lot. There's just a couple of flashbacks, mainly because obviously they're dead, they can't really be in this book. But she definitely has a lot of like mommy issues mainly. I feel like with her dad, it was just kind of a very distant relationship. They didn't really have necessarily like issues, they just were very distant. But she also kind of felt like she couldn't like exist with her mom if her dad wasn't there also. So she had wished that her dad had outlived her mom instead of the other way around. But yeah, you could definitely see where a lot of her own issues come from is her mom. So I thought that was really interesting as well. And like, as awful as this main character was, as, you know, just like, she really is the embodiment of the early 2000s in like a character form. As awful as she is, I did have like these moments of compassion towards her. I did have these moments of even like empathy with her. Like, I could see parts of myself in this main character. Like, when you're going through grief and you're going through a lot of like mental health issues, this is just kind of how you feel. Like, you want to take that year off and just sleep the entire time, not have to deal with anything, not have to be accountable to anybody, and just like take a rest, because you feel like literally no part of your life has been restful. And that's definitely where I could relate to this main character. And I think, you know, when you're dealing with stuff like depression or anxiety or whatever, you have that level of apathy that this main character has, and I've definitely experienced that level of apathy. And so I could find parts of this book relatable to me, which I think was kind of important to the narrative, because without those levels of like compassion and empathy, this book would have just been awful. It just would have been horrible to read. You would be like I can't even stand this character. Like, there's nothing to even connect me to her. But there were definite moments that I felt like, okay, I can see like where she's coming from, why she wants to do this. And yeah, I just really enjoyed this book. I was so shocked. I almost like sat down. I didn't like even plan out what I was going to say when I sat down to film this update, mainly because I'm like, you know what, it'll just like come right out of you, and it did. I'm so surprised that I even had a lot of things to say about this book. I clearly loved it. I am just so shocked that I liked this book so much. Like, what? I didn't know. I thought that I was gonna read this and like DNF it halfway through and like get rid of it. I think I will be interested in reading some other books by Ottessa Moshfegh. I think that her as an author, it's very interesting. Like, I definitely want to see what she comes out with next. And I also, as I know that she just recently put out a new book, I believe it's called Latvona. And I know that she has other books, obviously, like Eileen, and there's another one that has like an UFO on the cover that I almost bought. Now I can't remember what it's called, but there are other books that she has out that I can totally read. And I do want to see if there is a pattern of like specifically fat phobia within her books, because that was kind of the main issue of like, why does she use that as a tool to show how awful her characters are? Like, why does she specifically use fat phobia? So I would be intrigued to see if there is actually a pattern within her work, so that'd be interesting. Anyway, I highly recommend this book. I mean, I don't feel like I have spoiled it too much for anybody, at least I hope I haven't. I just really enjoyed this book so much. So yeah, if you are even a little bit interested in picking this up, I hope that you take some of my warnings to heart and kind of like decide whether this would be worth it to read, because if it's not, then that's fine, that's great. But if it is worth it to read, I definitely recommend it, and I think that you're gonna love it. I personally loved it, so, you know, take my word for it. Alright, so I really enjoyed getting to make this reading vlog. I wish that I kind of had updated a little more throughout the way, but I feel like, you know, this last half of the book I read mostly at Starbucks, so I couldn't necessarily update at Starbucks, which was kind of a bummer. But if you want to see me read any other books for reading vlogs, let me know in the comments down below, because I have quite a few books that I need to get through and I would love to read them. And if you enjoyed this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Also, go ahead and follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Goodreads, Storygraph, TikTok. All the links are going to be down below, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye! Ooh,